It's your open source advocate and I'm back with another video, and today we're going to talk about continuing our MSP on open source. So in episode 1 there was lots of comments. I will get to those, I will talk about those, but I want to save that for a different video. Today we're going to set up our IdP and we're going to use Authentik. Now you can use other IdPs if you want to, it is completely up to you. There are a lot of really amazing open source IdPs out there. There's Keycloak, there's Citadel, there's Authelia, there's Authentik. There's just so many. You can pick the one that you like the best. You do not have to use Authentik, but that's the one that I'm going to go with because it's the one I've been using the most lately, and it's the one I'm most comfortable with right now. The other thing we're going to set up today is Netbird, and we're going to set that up to be our VPN solution. Now, if you want to use the quick install of Netbird, which I did in my previous video, you can go watch that one for sure, and it will get you set up with Citadel as your authentication provider, your IdP, along with Netbird. So it's a really nice, easy, quick install kind of setup. Makes things a lot easier, I guess you'd say, but I really want to use my own authentication provider in this case and kind of set it up. And it's one that I'm used to, but it's, again, completely up to you. Now we're going to start off, and I'm going to set up my systems on some VPS software or hardware because one, I want to make sure that whatever I'm setting up is going to give the most uptime to my clients as we move forward in the future. But also things like DigitalOcean, Linode, Hertzner, Vultr, they have really inexpensive but really great hardware that makes it easy to get started for not too much. Now I want to start off giving you all of the information. In my show notes or in my description down below the video here, I've got a link to DigitalOcean. If you click on that affiliate link, it will bring you to DigitalOcean, and when you sign up, you will get 60 days and I think $50 or $100 credit. I can't remember which one. But it's a good amount of credit that lets you run like the $6 or the $12 DigitalOcean VPS for an entire month. That's $6 or $12 for a month. So if you only keep them for a couple of days, they're just going to charge you a fraction of that. So $50 or $100 is a lot of credit to use with DigitalOcean to test out what they have and see what they've got. And I'll show you a few of the things that they've got today as we go through this. But if you prefer Linode, or if you prefer Vultr, or if you prefer any of the others, it's fine. Go use them. It's okay. I'm not as familiar with them. That's why I'm sticking with DigitalOcean. I've had really great experience with DigitalOcean. I like the service that they provide. I like the tooling that they've got. It really works great. So if you do stick with them, if you stay for 2 months and then you say, you know what, I'm ready to start paying, and you pay them, I get a credit. If you say, I'm canceling before I start paying, I don't get a credit. It's as simple as that. That's all there is to it. There's nothing more. The other one that I'm going to talk about is Hover. I use Hover to set up my domain name, and I need you guys to go and make sure, one, you have a domain name. Make sure it's a fairly professional domain name. So I came up with sysmainit.com. I searched for a while to find one I really liked, and that one was great, so I got it. I think it was about $15 to pay for that domain name for the next 2 years, maybe a year. But it's mine for that long to test out and see how far I can get with it. The thing I like about Hover, and again, I have an affiliate link in the description below. If you go and you sign up for Hover and you use the affiliate link, I get a credit. If you don't, I don't. It's that simple again. I don't get anything from Hover other than a credit to help pay for my domains and things like that. The thing I like is that it's very easy to see what you're working with, so you can see all of the information here. It's easy to get to the tools that you want to use for your domain, and in this case, a lot of times we really just need access to our DNS tooling. It's very easy to find. I use GoDaddy as well for a lot of my domains from a long time ago, and I just hate their interface. Their interface is miserable. So much stuff that should be just right there, super obvious, easy to get to, is just hidden, and then they want you to click on things that are extras and upsells and all kinds of crap. I don't like it. So Hover is definitely one that I prefer, but again, you can use any registrar you want as long as they give you the tools you need to change your DNS settings, mail exchange settings, and things like that as we go forward. You should be fine. So all that said, what we're going to set up today is basically our starter framework of having our domain name, a reverse proxy to help us route our traffic to our different servers or services. We're going to set up Authentik, and then we're going to set up Netbird here to use Authentik as the authentication provider for our VPN. So that'll get you started, and that'll let you start getting your machines added to Netbird and start working with that authentication piece. And you can go set up other things while you're waiting for the next video to come out, and the next video will add some more pieces to this whole puzzle. And it's going to be great. It's going to be a little bit of a long video, no doubt. That's just how I go. But stick with me, and you're going to get into a whole bunch of really great stuff. Before we get started, I do want to say thank you so much to my patrons over at Patreon. it means the world to me that you guys want to support my content, that you like my content enough to say, here's a little bit of money every month. I mean, truly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I could not thank you enough. It just means so much. And for you guys that go down and click on the Buy Me a Coffee link and you send me a little cash through PayPal, man, it just makes my day to see one of those things come through. It is always such a joy. I appreciate you so very much, and it just makes me feel good about the world, and a lot of times it's hard to do that. So you guys just make it so much better, and I truly appreciate it. If you haven't clicked already, please click on that thumbs up, because it tells YouTube this was a good video, and it shows it to other people. When you do that, it helps me trend, which is really great for growing the channel. Also, if you haven't clicked on that subscribe button, please click it. Make sure you subscribe so you'll see other videos coming out in this series and other videos that I do about this amazing open source software we have available to us. I appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Now let's get started. All right, the first thing I did was I went out and got a domain name, because I wanted to have something to work with when we start getting our stuff set up. Once we've got this, we need to go actually set up a server to use. Now, you can use your server at home as long as you have a public IP address and port 80 and 443 available to you, and it doesn't change too often, or you have something that will help keep your dynamic address up to date on your registrar. But in my case, I'm going to use a virtual private server that gets a public IP address anyways. So I'm going to go here to DigitalOcean. I'm just going to click on Create. I'm going to click on Create Droplet, which is what they call the virtual servers. And I'm going to pick a place that's geographically close to me. I'm actually right between New York and San Francisco, so it doesn't really matter which one I pick. I'll just go with the server they chose already. I do want a Ubuntu server, so I'm going to pick that. They've got the OS, they've got the Marketplace. Marketplace is just a bunch of apps that you can search and kind of get set up with a single click, I guess is the best way to put it. So you can check these out. They're pretty great. They've got some pretty cool stuff. But today we're going to do an OS. Ubuntu, I'm going to go with 2204. That's the long-term release. As we get down here to the server sizes, you'll see 7, 14, 21. That's the pricing. But if you check these little boxes, now you see $8, $16, $24. And then if you jump all the way over to here, you've got these less expensive servers, which can really help you make sure that things are going to run well. I've already tested Authentik on the $6 server. It just didn't work well. But for $6 server, I can absolutely put my reverse proxy on it. So I'm going to start with this one. We're going to do a $12 server for Authentik and then a $12 server for Netbird. And I'm intentionally separating these out. I want to keep them separated. They all use very similar ports, and we're going to keep things nice and simple to start out. Good thing about these services, I'll go ahead and get this server created before I go too far. Let's scroll down. So we'll just scroll down. We'll get here to the SSH keys. If you don't have one, I suggest you create one and upload it and use that for your access to your servers. I'm going to check these boxes here so I can get access from different devices. If you really don't want to use an SSH key, you can use a password, but I recommend SSH keys. They are much more secure than passwords. Once you've selected those, just go down here and give this thing a name, and we're just going to call this sysmainit.com. And that's going to be our main gateway to all of our other stuff. Now you can tag this, so I'm going to tag this as sysmainit, and it just helps you find your servers as you get more and more servers going. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to say create droplet. It's going to start creating that thing, and I'll talk about something why we're doing these separate things. One, it makes it easier, but as we grow in our company, at some point, I may not want to host my own IdP. I may want to start using their services so that I'm not managing something that takes more time out of my day. I'm already going to have clients that are taking time out of my day, and that's the important part, is because they're paying me. So these guys have pricing where I can say, you know what, I want you to start hosting my stuff for me. So they've got a free tier where you can get started today and you can get all of the things you see here. Then you've got kind of, hey, I need to jump up a tier to a little bit higher pricing level, but I need more of these features and services, and you can do that as your company grows, which is awesome. And it also supports Authentik making the open source version of the software. It makes it where other people can get in there and get started with it and start using it for different things. And at some point, they can grow into this too if they want to, but it also helps Authentik stay viable as a company. Same thing with Netbird. Start off with your self-hosted if you want to, but when you go look at their pricing, you can get 100 devices with 5 users for nothing per month. Okay, this is awesome. If you say, you know what, I've gone beyond what I need here, you can jump up to this next tier for $5 a month, and it's still going to give you those 100 devices plus 10 more devices per user. So if you said, I've got 6 users now and I've got 150 devices, that's okay. You're going to be covered because this would get you 160 devices and 6 users for $30 a month. And hopefully at that point your company's making some pretty good money if you've got 5 employees plus yourself. So just keep in mind that this is the route that I'm going to be going as my company grows. It helps support these projects that we're going to love and be dependent on, and we want to do that as people who can give back to the community. All right, our server should be created. Let's check in here. Yes, it is, and it gives us a nice public IP address, so I'm just going to copy this address right here. I'm going to go back over here to Hover, and I'm going to change these 2 records, the star record and the @ record, for the A type record. So I'm just going to go over here to Edit. I'm going to replace this IP address, and I'm going to go here to Edit, and same thing, I'm going to replace this IP address, and that'll take a few minutes to propagate through the DNS system, so it's no big deal. But what we want to do now is go set up that server. So we're just going to go to our command line here, and we're going to do SSH root, because it just creates the root user by default, and we'll go through and kind of fix a non-root user. And we're going to put in that IP address and hit enter. It's going to ask us, do we want to go there? Yes, we do. And we'll clear that out, and we're inside of our server now. First thing we need to do is update and upgrade our server. So we're going to do apt update, 2 ampersands, apt upgrade, and then -y. And that's going to run all the updates and upgrades for the software that we need, and it'll take just a couple of minutes, and then we'll be back. If you ever come to this type of screen, we're just going to go ahead and just tab down to OK and hit OK and just say leave, keep it the way it is. It's going to process a little bit more, and there'll be a couple more screens that'll come up like that. And again, you just want to keep the defaults for the most part. I've never had a reason to change it or do something different. If you see something and you realize, oh wait, I need this other option, then pick it. But for the most part, the defaults have never failed me. Same thing here. When you have a kernel model update, it's just going to warn you, just go ahead and hit OK, and then just tab to OK to restart those services. It's going to go through that, and we're done with that update. Now the next thing we need to do is add a new user that's not the root user but has sudo privileges. So we're going to do add user, and then the username you want. So in my case I'll put Brian, in your case put whatever your name is. It's going to ask us for a strong password, so we're going to do that. And then one more time here. And then you can fill out this information if you want to, but it's not required. I'm just going to hit yes here at the end to confirm. And now I want to make my user a super user, so we're going to do user mod space -a capital G space sudo space and then my name, or whatever username you created in this case. Hit enter, and finally the last thing is we set up SSH keys, and that lives in ls-al here. If you see this little .ssh folder, that's where that lives. We need to get these SSH keys out of the root user or from the root user and put them in our own new users folder, and then make sure that our new user is the owner of those files. So what we're going to do is we're going to say cp and then space -r for recursive, which means copy the folder and everything inside of it. And we're going to say .ssh, and then we're going to tell it to copy it to /home/Brian, so it'll be /home/ your username in this case. And then we're going to put an end slash, okay? So it'll copy that folder to the /home/Brian folder. And then we're going to chown, which means change the owner, space -R, and then space the user, which is me, Brian, and then I'm also in the Brian group, so I'm going to make them part of the Brian group. So it's going to be chown space -R space Brian Brian, which is the user in the group, and then it's going to be /home/Brian, and we can just leave it there because it's going to get everything below Brian that it's going to make me the owner of, which is what we need. All right, we've done that. Now let's reboot real quick because we did get a kernel update. Reboots on DigitalOcean are very fast. It's 20 to 30 seconds most of the time, not much longer than that. So we're going to just clear that out, and we'll give it about 20 or 30 seconds here. If you were watching me like Network Chuck, you'd have seen me take a drink of coffee just now while we're waiting on this thing to change. So what we can do is do SSH, and we're going to do Brian, but we're going to use sysmainit.com domain. Let's see if it's pointing to the right place yet. Yes. And we are in. Awesome. So now we're able to use the domain name because that means our IP address is pointing to the right place, or our domain is pointing to the right IP address, which is great. Now we need to install Docker Docker Compose and NGinX Proxy Manager. And luckily I have a very simple script that will do that for us. So I'm going to go back over here, and I'm actually going to start with my Authentik instructions, but I've got this same set of instructions on anything where we do anything with Docker. So I'm just going to highlight this line right here, and I'll have this in the show notes in the description, of course. I'll point you guys to these documents. I'm going to copy that, and we're just going to do Control-Shift-V to paste it in, and I'm going to make one modification. If you just run it like this, it's going to download a file, and it's going to be called install_docker_nproxyman.sh. I don't like that name, so I'm just going to do -O install-docker.sh, like that. So that's going to download that file, and if we do an ls, you'll see now we have install-docker.sh. Now let's change the permissions to make that executable. So we'll do chmod +x install-docker.sh, and then we're going to run that file with /install-docker.sh. It's going to go and try to figure out what kind of system we're running. So we're just going to grab that information, and we can use that down here to say, oh no, I'm not on CentOS or Fedora, I'm not on Debian 10, I'm not on 1804 Ubuntu. Oh, here it is, 2204 plus, which means 2204, 2304, 2210, doesn't matter. Anything after 2204, this one should work for. So we're going to use number 4, but there's also Arch Linux, OpenSUSE. We've got ARM64 Raspbian basically. And then if you didn't want to run the installer, you can end it with 8. But we're going to run number 4, so we're going to type 4 and hit enter. It's going to ask us for our super user password, so make sure you know what that is. And then it's going to say, do you want to install Docker CE? Why? I do, yes, like why. Docker Compose, again, yes. NGinX Proxy Manager, yes. So I don't usually install NGinX Proxy Manager because on my home network I already have it, but in this case I need it. No to the rest of these things, and it's going to start doing its thing. Now, my script tries to update and upgrade everything, but the reason that I run the updates and upgrades beforehand is because those screens that popped up that I said tab and hit OK, you would not be presented those running my script, and it would look like the script is hung because it's actually waiting for input from you, and it's not going to know how to keep going. So if you ever get where you think, oh, this sure is taking forever to run these updates, like 20 minutes or something, it's probably hung there. Use Control-C, you can get out of the script and run your updates, and then rerun the script, and it'll try to do everything again. So right now it's installing Docker CE, which is the community edition. It's installing that from the repos, and we should get a pretty recent version here. All right, we got version 26.0.0, which is great. It's going to add us to the Docker group, so that's good. We want that. Now it's going to install Docker Compose, and it pulls that from Git, so you should get the most recent version of Compose. We got 2.26.0, great. And then it creates the Docker network for us, and we're going to install NGinX Proxy Manager into our Docker network. Everything is installed, should be up and running, and right here I give you a little bit of information about NGinX Proxy Manager. So you need to go to your server on port 81 right here, and then this is the default credentials, so we need to go change those, but we've got to do some other setup to secure NGinX Proxy Manager anyways, so we'll go do that. Let's go back to our browser, and we'll open up a new tab here, and we're going to go to sysmainit.com:81. That brings us to our NGinX Proxy Manager. Now we need to use those default credentials. So the user was admin@example.com, and the password is changeme, so CHANGEME. Once we've got those in, we'll sign in. And we'll tell these things don't remember for now. So it wants us to create the correct administrative user, so I'm going to put in my name and a different username and an email for me, and we'll hit save, and then it wants us to change that password, so we're going to type in the original CHANGEME, and then we're going to put in a new password that's a nice long strong password. Like that, and then we'll hit save. And now we've got everything set the way we want it. We've got our user here, which is great. But now we need to create an entry for the management portal here. We don't want people to be able to get to that on port 81, and certainly don't want to be able to get to it this way. So we're going to go here and we're going to set up a proxy host. So we don't have any set up. We're just going to click on create a new proxy host, and we're going to call this proxy.sysmainit.com, and we're going to hit tab so it turns into a little chip. We're going to put in sysmainit.com, and then we're going to put in 81. That's the port that we go to for the management console. We're going to say block common exploits, WebSocket support, and then we're going to jump over to the SSL tab up here. We're going to click here. We're going to set request new SSL certificate, force SSL, HTTP2, HSTS for both of these, and down here we're going to agree to the Let's Encrypt terms of service, and we're going to click save. This is going to go out. Let's Encrypt is going to say, hey, can I reach this thing that you just asked for on port 80? And if I can, then I'll issue you a certificate. So if this modal just goes away like that, and you see Let's Encrypt here, then you're set. So now we can click on this, and we should be able to get to our management console. Yes, there's our login. Great. Now what we want to do is we're going to close out of that. We're going to go back over here to DigitalOcean, and over here on the left panel, we're going to go down here to networking. So we're going to go here to firewall up at the top of this. I'll zoom this up a little bit. Firewall. And we're going to create a new one. Here's sysmainit proxy. In fact, let's destroy that one. That was my test one. And we'll just create it from scratch. So we'll go here and click the create button. We're going to give it a name. So sysmainit proxy. We'll just give it the same name. That's a good name. So it's already going to allow SSH, which is what we are doing. We have port 22 open. So what we need to do is add rules that we want to be allowed. So what do we want? We want HTTP and we want HTTPS. Every other port is going to be blocked once we save this. So 22, 80, and 443 are all that are going to be allowed, which is what we want right now. They've got some outbound rules. It's fine. Don't need to mess with that. And then we need to tell it which droplets do we want to include. Well, we want sysmainit.com, and we're going to hit save, and now that's going to be applied. So we've got that proxy in place and we've got that rule set applied. So let's go and actually try to get to what we just did. We did sysmainit.com:81. Now there's some browser caching that happens with Firefox, so actually let me open up Chrome. And we'll do it from here, sysmainit.com:81. Let's see if that'll let us get anywhere. It's trying. So it's being blocked. Let's go try proxy.sysmainit.com. And there we go. We get right to it. So exactly what we wanted to happen is happening. It's blocking our access if we don't use the proper URL. So people can't work around what we're trying to do. We've secured it to some extent by not allowing access through port 81. They have to go through our proxy, then they have to know our username and our password. So that's really good. All right, we've set up NGinX Proxy Manager. We're kind of moving along here, which is great. And the next step is to get Authentik set up. So we've got everything we need here in this article. We're going to get into that one right now. Now that we've got our proxy set up, we need to set up our IdP, which in this case is going to be Authentik. Got all of the directions right here. It's not going to be super difficult, but again, I want to create a separate server for this. So I'm going to jump back over here to DigitalOcean. There we go. And I'm going to go back to the droplets over here. So I'm going to zoom this back out just so I can see my list better. And we're going to click on Create Droplet. So it's that quick to create a virtual server. It'll go through and do its thing to provision it, get everything ready, and we're going to get an IP address from that. So we're going to go back into our proxy area. We're going to say add a new proxy. And we're just going to call this auth.sysmainit.com. And we're going to hit tab so it makes a little chip. Now we need to get the IP address of this server. So it just created it. Here it is. We can just click copy, go over here and paste that in. We don't know yet what this port's going to be, but I believe it's going to be 80. So we can just go ahead and put 80. We're going to hit block common exploits, WebSocket support. Now we're not going to do the SSL certificate yet. We'll get it in a minute, but we're just going to click on save. So we've got that as a placeholder, and we'll come back and we'll edit it here in a minute after we're done with the rest of the setup. Now to save a little bit of time, I ran the updates and upgrades. I went ahead and added my non-root user with sudo privileges. So I'm just going to log back in using SSH and that IP address with my non-root user. And we are in, so great. Now what we want to do is we need to set up NGinX, or we need to set, not NGinX Proxy Manager. What we want to do is we need to set up Docker and Docker CE again, but we don't need NGinX Proxy Manager this time. But for this, we can still use that same script we just used, so we can just copy that and then paste it in here, and again, -o install docker.sh. That finished up. So the next step we need to do is actually just reboot this thing, or exit. Actually, we just need to exit, and we'll just log right back in. And what that does is that puts our user into that Docker group, so I can do docker ps, and you can see there's nothing running. So now we're going to do mkdir docker, or -p actually, -p docker/authentik. Just like that. We're going to cd into docker authentic, and we're going to create two files. So we're going to say touch.env and touch-docker-compose.yml. Make sure we spelled it correctly. And the touch command just creates the file. They're just empty files right now. So first let's do our env files. We're going to do nano.env. And I'm going to go back over to my documentation here. And we will scroll down, and we got to go past this. We're going to get down here to this env section. I'm just going to grab all of this and copy it. And there's also a copy button right here if you want to use that. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to paste all of that in. So let's just go back to the top here. So our Postgres user is Authentik. That's great. Here we need a really strong password. So we're going to create one in just a minute. And then right here we also need a really strong key. So we'll create one of those in just a minute. We want enabled true is fine. Error reporting. It's up to you guys whether you keep that on or off. The Authentik email host. So we need to fill in our SMTP host information. You need to know that. I can't help you with that, but in my case it's box.fixitdelrio.com. It is port 587. I'll put in my user for that email. Now if you have your own email server, if you have access to create different emails that you want to create, you can 100% create one that's not your main email, but for now, for the time's sake, I'm going to use that one. This one also needs to be the password for your email, so we'll fix that. I do use TLS and it's set to true. I don't use SSL, so it's set to false. Now if you use SSL and not TLS, you would switch these, okay? Timeout 10 is fine. I need to have this email as well, and I need it to match the one above, so. And then we're going to go down here to the port, that's 80 and 443. Now this is why I set this up on a different server. If you're using the same server as where your NGinX Proxy Manager is running, you need to change these ports to something other than 80 and 443 because that's what NGinX Proxy Manager uses already. And you need to remember what you've set these to so that you can set them up in your NGinX Proxy Manager forwarding system. But I'm going to leave them as 80 and 443. It's going to make things a little bit simpler is all. And then right here, I'm going to change this to 2024.2.2 is the most recent version that I remember right now. So I'm going to hit Control-O to save, and then we'll do Control-X to exit. Now don't forget to go back and add those passwords in. I'm going to do that right now, and then we'll get on to the Docker Compose file. All right, now let's edit our Docker Compose file. So let's do nano docker compose.yaml. And again, it's an empty file, so we're going to go back to our instructions, and we'll just scroll up here, and we'll just start grabbing this and copy it, and then we're going to go back in here. Oops, there we go, and we'll paste everything in with Control-Shift-V, like Victor. And we'll go back to the top here, and let's just look through this thing. So we've got the Postgres SQL stuff. It's going to pull everything from that file we just created. And if we keep going down, we've got the Redis set up here. It's going to pull the information it needs from the environment file. And then we're going to keep going. And right here, we've got the volumes that they're setting up, which is great. We've got our compose port. To our compose port, that's going to use that 80 and 443 that we already had there. Unless you change it, it'll be something different. But here, where we've got the worker, there's two places we need to change this, just in case. So it's good to have these match. And we're going to change this to 2024.2.2. And we'll go back up here to this Authentik server and change the same thing right here, 4.2.2, just like that. That should be everything we need to change in here. Let's just double check it though. Yeah, everything else looks good, so we'll just hit Control O, save, enter, and then Control X to exit Nano. We should have everything set up and ready. Let's just double check our instructions just to make sure we're not missing any steps. We've done the Docker Compose, we've done the config file. I'll talk about the things you probably need to change. And then yeah, Docker Compose up-d. We'll just copy this and we'll just paste in this command right here. So what this says is, first command, Docker Compose up-d. So pull down the images, bring up my containers, run them in the background as a daemon. Second command says, once those are up and running, show me the log output so I can watch for any kind of weird anomalies. So we're just going to hit enter. It's going to start pulling that stuff down. So when you watch this stuff scroll through, you can see all these things that say OK. What you're really watching for is like error warning, where it might start trying to retry something that failed over and over. That would tell you that something's gone wrong and you might need to fix some parameters. So far this is doing well, which is good. So system check identified no issues. That's always a good sign. All right, I'm going to Control C out of the logs here. It looks like it's getting finished up. And we're going to go, and we've got Authentik set up. So we're just going to go back and we're going to look at our DigitalOcean setup. So one of the things we can do, and because we've put these in the same area, so if you look here, I know it's a little hard to see because I'm zoomed out, but you see SFC3, so this is the San Francisco Center 3. So I want to put sysmain IT, Auth, and all the other ones that I'm going to use, I want to put in that same data center. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to use their networking information, networking. Whoops, let's see if I got to it. No, I got to monitoring. Let's go back. Let's hit networking. There we go. And what we can do is set up a virtual private cloud, which means basically kind of like a local area network inside of DigitalOcean. So I'm going to go to VPC here under networking. I'm going to click on create. I want to pick SFC3 right here. And it says configure the IP range. So generate an IP range for me, recommended, which is fine. Choose a name and description. Let's call this sysmain IT VPC 01 is fine, and this is my VPC. Okay, we're going to create that network. And you can see it gives this private IP address range of 10.124.16.0. So one of the things I didn't realize, I wanted to create a virtual private cloud, so basically a local area network for the droplets that I'm creating for this MSP. And I created the virtual private cloud here. It's very simple. You can do that over here in the networking. I created one, but when I did, I realized they tell you you can't add existing resources to this virtual private cloud. You can only add new ones. But if you have an existing resource you want to add, you can take a snapshot, which is really easy through DigitalOcean. You just go over here to this, click on your server, click on snapshots, take snapshot, which I did. Now I'm going to do create droplet. So it's going to bring me to this screen that says, okay, what do you want to do? Well, I want to put it back in San Francisco. I want to make sure it's in San Francisco 3, which is what we've got. And then down here it says your VPC network. What should I put it on? Well, I don't want to use the default. I want to use the one I just created, which is this one. So I'm going to create this. So I'm going to tell it to use that one. And then you kind of go through the same thing you did before. So in this case, I did sysmainit.com. That's the snapshot that I want to use. I'm going to make sure it's highlighted. I'm going to go down here and again, just pick the size server that I used for it and kind of just run through this process, pick my SSH keys so I can log into it. It's kind of the same thing you did, except now you're just saying, hey, on this one that you're creating from the snapshot, put it into this virtual private cloud space. So here I can just say proxy, just like that, because that's what it is anyways. And I'm going to say create. So it's going to go through and it's going to create this, and once it does, it's going to get a new public IP address, so I'll need to go update that in my hover domain, which is fine. But yeah, we should be set up and ready after we do that. But now I'll have both of these things in my virtual private cloud, and when I create the next one for Netbird, I'll put it in there out of the gate, just so that I don't have to do this whole snapshot step. But if you're like me and you did something like that and you're like, man, I wish I could add these to a virtual private cloud, you can. You just have to kind of go through the snapshot step. But then it pulls that snapshot over and helps you get everything running. The great thing about the snapshots is it's a really fast way where if you're about to make a change that you're not sure if it's going to break everything, first create a snapshot, go make your change. If it breaks everything, you can pull that snapshot back up and just pull everything back up from it. It's really great. Let's see. So we've got Proxy. Okay, good. So yeah, so that one's set. I want to go get rid of this one now because I'm not actually using it. And I'm just going to click here, and I'm going to click on destroy. Now when you go to destroy it, you can click on destroy, and it's going to tell you, hey, you've got some other things, so I've got that snapshot associated with it. If you don't check that box, it'll keep that snapshot, and it'll continue to bill you for that storage space. It's not a lot, but I mean it's money. And then what they would like you to do is type in, like here, you got to type it if you want to destroy it. So you got to type it exactly like they show it. Then you can click on destroy. So that one's gone, but we've got the two left that we need. So I'm going to grab this proxy address. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go back over here to hover, and I'm just going to edit these two entries real quick. There we go. And then this one. There we go. It's that simple. We changed our A records. It'll take a few minutes to propagate through the systems, but we've got our proxy ready. So now we'll close this one because we'll want to go log into the correct one in a minute. And let's see. Yeah, this is our Netbird stuff. We're still working with Authentik, so we want to get there. But what I can do now is instead of routing to the public IP address, I'll be able to route to this private IP address, which is what I want. So when I click into this Auth VPC, I should be able to get some information about it. We've got the IPv4 there, but we should have the private IP right here, which is what we want to use inside of our proxy manager. So we're going to use that to route the traffic that we're trying to get through to the system, and we don't have to be using this public IP address that way. So we're creating a nice virtual private cloud, and we can actually put a firewall in front of this so that nothing is allowed through except port 22, which is how it's set up right now. So yeah, we should be pretty good to go. I'm gonna copy this here just like that. All right, I had to do a little bit of troubleshooting. It was really more my fault, but I've been able to use my VPC private IP address here, but I had to change the subdomain to idp.sysmainit.com only because when I was doing all my testing and everything, I did Auth, and I ran it a few times and I requested certificates a few times, and there are limits on Let's Encrypt as to how many times you can refresh a certificate in a certain amount of time. So do keep that in mind. But if you haven't tried this and this is kind of your first outing, you should get it to work whenever you click save the first time. Now, whether you're using the public IP address or the private IP address, doesn't matter. Just make sure you get the right address, the right port, turn these things on, and then jump over here. And of course, you'd pick request a new certificate, turn on these options, and save. I've already done that. So we should be able to click on this and have it open up. And it's going to take us to Authentik. And we actually need to go to a special address the first time. So let's go get that from our instructions. So we can go back to our show notes here. And I try to keep my show notes where they're searchable. This is zoomed in, so it's a little bit weird looking. But if I start typing, and we'll scroll back down. We've done everything. We did our Docker Compose up. And here we are. We can navigate to the IP address. And we're going to set up our reverse proxy, which we just did. And the first time we need to do this, we need to go to this IP, to this address right here. So we'll just copy this part right here, I think. It's just that last bit that we need. So we'll go and so that one was an IP for testing. Here we go. I'm just going to get to here, and right there, I think I've got an extra slash there. Let's take care of that. Now, if we go, should bring us to our setup page. Awesome. I'll zoom this up a little bit for you guys. And we're going to put in our email. And we want to put in a nice, long, strong password. So again, using something really strong is important, but using a password manager is just as important. So I'm just going to go to add a new entry here and BRI. And we will just let this generate one, and of course we can change the rules for how long it should be. Something like 32 ought to work. And yeah, so we'll copy that, save it, and we can paste it here and paste it here and hit continue. Now if you haven't watched my video on Authentik, there is a lot that you can do with it, but we are logged in, we've got it set up, and this is really kind of your starting page. So as you add applications, they'll be added to this page. And the great thing is you can log into Authentik and then just click on the application and it'll take you to that application and you'll already be authenticated for it. So it's kind of a nice start page whenever you have to do authenticated applications like that. We can just click on administration. It's going to take us to the admin dashboard. The first time it has to load, give it a little time. It's got, a few things that it's doing. It's caching some things for you probably in your browser as well. So be patient. We're going to get ready to go and get our Netbird installation set up next, and we'll also add that to our virtual private cloud. All right, we're going to do the same things we've just done. We're just going to create another droplet. So we're just going to go to create droplet. You could have done it from that blue button right there as well. Again, we're going to pick San Francisco, and we want to pick San Francisco 3 because that's where our VPC is at. And here at the VPC level, we're just going to choose the VPC that we created for our company. And again, I'm going to pick a Ubuntu 2204 droplet. And for this one, I'm going to pick the $12 droplet as well, because the actual standards that they set from Netbird say you want two gigs of RAM and at least one virtual CPU. You could go to a higher one if you want more, but I think that's a good place to start. We can always resize it if we need to. As we go down, we don't need additional storage, backups. Our authentication method is going to be SSH, so we'll just highlight the ones that we want there. And we're going to keep going down, and we just need to give this a name, so we're just going to call this nb.sysmainit.com. That's Netbird. And we'll give it main IT, sysmain IT for my tag. You can use your tag for whatever you want to group yours together. And we'll click on create. All right, got our server set up. So we're just going to copy that public IP address there. And we're going to go back into our terminal here, paste that in. And again, we're going to log in as root the first time. And same as we did before, we want to do an update and upgrade. We want to add our user and make them a sudo user. We want to make sure we push our keys over, and then we'll reboot the system, and then we'll be ready to get started with Netbird installation. If you ever see a repeated message like that one that was there that says could not get locked, don't sweat it. It's just when the virtual private server starts up the first time, it does a little bit of stuff in the background where it may be running a couple of updates that it needs, and that locks the update capabilities. So it'll keep trying like you saw, and once it's done, it'll be able to run the update. Okay, I've set up my non-root user, I've installed my Docker and Docker Compose, and we are ready to get on with the Netbird setup. Now, in my previous video, I did the fast setup or the quick start for Netbird, but this time I'll actually want to go through the advanced guide because this is how we're going to get our Authentik set up. So we've got some really useful information here. So they set up a stun and turn server to help things connect and communicate. They also go through, the advanced setup stuff here where they tell you what ports you need to have open. So we do want to set up that firewall, and we do want to set up to have these open ports for us whenever it's time. So we want to kind of pay attention to these, but we'll do that after we've got everything else going. So getting the latest stable Netbird code, this isn't very hard. We just need to go and grab this. And we're just going to run this command, and we're just going to put export in front of it. So that's going to set this as a variable in our system. So we'll copy that, and we'll go back here, and we'll just do export, and then paste that in. And then we're going to go back, and we're going to do the same thing with this latest tag value. We'll copy that and export, and the same thing, just paste in that bit, and we can just check it by doing echo $latest $latest, tag, and it gives us the tag version there, which is great. And coming back over here, we need to clone the repository now, and that's just going to use those two things we just got. So we'll copy this, and we want to go into our Docker folder before we do this. So we're going to do cd docker, and we don't have one, so we're going to do mkdir docker and cd docker, and then we're just going to run that git clone command. So it's going to pull everything down. It's going to create a Netbird folder for us. So if we do ls, we'll see Netbird. We're going to seed into Netbird and then / infrastructure files. And if we do an ls, you're going to see a bunch of files here. The one that we really want to work with is this setup.env.example, but we're going to copy that. So we're going to do cp setup.env.example to setup.env, like that. So that leaves us this file as it is. And now we can edit this setup.env file. And if we mess up, we can go back and just start again with that clean example file. So we're going to do nano setup.env. And there's a lot of stuff going on in here, so I'm going to go through this with you pretty slowly. But I can tell you here at the top, we're not going to change anything about these tags. We're just going to let it do what it does. But the Netbird domain, so we're going to call this nb.sysmainit.com. So that's what we're going to set up. That's what we're going to set up in our proxy manager as well. And then on the turn domain, we can just leave this blank because it will use this one by default, and everything's going to be set up on the same server, so that's going to be fine. We're going to come down here to the IP address, and in this case, they want the external IP address. So we can just grab that from DigitalOcean real quick. It's pretty easy. And we'll just grab this address, and we will go back and paste it in there. Now, when we get out of the OIDC section, this is a lot, and they give you a ton of comments about what all of this stuff is. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just get rid of all this. I know it seems crazy. I'm going to get rid of all this stuff. I'm going to go all the way down to this Let's Encrypt section, and I'm just using Control K to delete those lines. In Nano, you can use Control K to delete a line. As long as your cursor's on that line, it'll delete it if you hit Control K. So I'm just going to leave that gap. I'm going to save this just so I don't lose my changes. And I'm actually going to go grab my example stuff and paste it in here, and then we'll go through setting up Authentik. Okay, I've updated this section, and you can see it's quite a bit shorter now, but this is what we need for the Authentik setup, and we've got some really simple things we've got to go fill in here. But we need to go set up our Authentik site first. So we're going to go back to the Netbird documentation, and as we go through this, they're going to get down here to prepare your configuration file. They tell you some stuff, but what's good is if you go on down here to step 3, they get into the IdP setup. We can just click on Authentik, and they've got a nice step-by-step of what we need to do. So in our Authentik instance, we're going to go into applications, and we're going to click on create an application, or click on create a provider. We're going to click create, and we're going to pick OAuth, OpenID. We're going to call it Netbird. We're going to pick the authentication flow, this default. Now we can change this and make it something better later, but for now we'll use the default. And then we're going to pick the explicit authorization flow as well. And then down here under the protocol settings, we're going to make sure it's set to public. And then on the origins for the URI, we need to go set these up inside of there. So we'll grab these in a minute and get them all set up. And then under the signing key, we can just use the SSL cert that they've already got. And then there's a couple of things to do under advanced, which isn't hard, and will be set up with the provider. So let's go do that, and let's go to our Authentik install here. We'll go to applications and providers, just like they say. Now the first time you run these things, it takes just a second because it's kind of setting up things fresh. So be patient, but we're going to say click create provider. If you see it like this, where it looks like there's nothing there, and if you are using the Dark Reader extension, go and disable it, and you'll notice, hey, I can see everything. For whatever reason, the Dark Reader extension makes it look like there's nothing there. I was super confused the first time I did that and had no idea why I couldn't see anything, but there we go. So we're going to pick OAuth 2, OpenID, click Next, and we're just going to do exactly what they said, Netbird for this. The authentication flow, we're going to use the default, and this one we're going to use the explicit. We're going to come on down, protocol settings, we're going to make it public. Okay. And then the redirect URI origins, so we're just going to grab that from that Netbird documentation, which is right here, and it says we need these 3 here. So let's do control copy, and then we'll go back to our setup and we'll paste those in, except we're going to make a little change here. We're going to put this on its own line, and we're going to put this on its own line, and then this part where it says domain, we actually need to type in the domain that we want. So this is going to be the Netbird domain. So this for me is nb.sysmainit.com, and the same thing goes here, and then it's just going to have this dot asterisk after it, so nb.sysmainit.com. And then this last one should be localhost with :53,000. So make sure those are filled in correctly. You shouldn't have commas afterwards, and you should have them each on their own line. So we've got that set. The signing key, you can just leave it as a self-signed certificate unless you have one you want to use. The advanced protocol settings, this one where it says minutes right here for the access code validity, we need to change that to 10, not 1. And then we leave everything else alone. We're going to come on down here, and we want to select this option that says based on user's ID next to the subject mode. So based on user's ID right there. And then everything else should be set. There's nothing else for us to really change, so we're just going to click on finish. And that's going to create our provider. So we've got a provider set. We're going to have to go create an application for that provider next. So let's go check their documentation though. So they give us an image, and then now we got to create the application. We're going to create the application. We're going to call it Netbird. Make sure the slug is Netbird with a lowercase n, and then provider should be Netbird as well. That's the one we just created, so we'll just pick it from a drop down. So it's going to look like this, and then there's some extra settings we can do there, and I'll show you one real quick. But once we're done with that, we've created the application. So step 3 is going to be creating the service account. So let's go create the application first. So we've got applications. I'm going to zoom this out just a little bit. We're going to do create, and right here we're going to type Netbird, and then the slug is Netbird lowercase. No group right now, but we'll go ahead and put Netbird in there as the provider, just like they said we should. And then down here, we can actually pick a logo. So I happen to have one. If you don't, you can go get one, but I'll try to make this one available. All I did was take away the background for it. And we're going to create that application. And then you can see the logo, and then there's Netbird. So we've got our application created. It's tied to our provider, which is what we want. So we're doing good. One other thing when you first set up Authentik that you may want to check is under applications, go here to your outposts, and then click on this outpost right here. We're just going to click on edit to open up this outpost. And under the advanced settings, go here to, I think it's line 3 most of the time, but it says the Authentik host. Make sure that it has your actual URL. It's not an IP address or some kind of weird sample thing. Make sure it's actually your Authentik URL. If it's not, change it to your Authentik URL and then save those changes. Just something that'll help you save some headaches later on. So we're going to go down here to directory, and we're going to go to users, and we're going to create a new user, and it's going to be a service account. So we're going to click on create service account. We're going to call this Netbird with a capital N, and we're going to tell it not to create a group. So we're going to leave that off. We're going to leave expiring turned on, and that's fine. And we're going to click on create. It's going to give us this password, so let's save that. We'll copy that, and then let's save it in our password manager. And we'll actually add a new entry here, and this will be nb.sysmainit.com, and then this is going to be Netbird, and we'll paste in this password that they gave us, and we're going to save that just so we'll have it in our password manager there. And we're going to click on create. So we've created that, and there's this little toggle that says hide service accounts. If it's on, just turn it off so that you can see that service account there. And then we need to add Netbird to our administrator group. So we're going to go to groups, and we're going to click on Authentik admins. We're going to go to users here at the top, and we're going to say add an existing user. We're going to click on the plus. We're going to put a tick next to Netbird here and click add and add. And then here, if you want to make sure that Netbird got added, we can just untick again this box and make sure Netbird's on the list. So we see that it's there. So we've created our service account that we need for Netbird as well. So this is telling us where we're going to get this credential. And then they give us a bunch of information, which is basically what I already have filled in over on the other thing. And then step 5, we've configured everything, so we're doing good. So we can go back to our documentation actually. And we got step 4, which is disable single account mode, but we're going to go finish out everything we need first. So let's go back to our providers. We're going to click on Netbird on the title there, and we're going to grab this client ID because we're going to need this thing. And I'm going to make this a little smaller just to get everything all on one line here. Copy that, and we're going to go back over here. Now we're going to see that we need that in several places, so we need it right here. So I'm going to paste it in. For the same thing for the audience, we're going to paste it in. For the client ID, we're going to paste it in. For the service, for this one, we're going to paste it in. So it's really the same number over and over and over. And then we've got this other client ID right here where we're going to paste it in. And then we've got that password that we just got. So let's go copy that out of our Bitwarden stuff here. Oops, there we go. And we'll go here and we're going to get that NB sysmain there. We're going to copy that password and we're going to paste that in. And this should be different from this client ID. And don't worry, I'll remake all these things afterwards so that it's new, so don't sweat it that you guys can see it. But that should have everything filled in for us now that we need. Now, the one thing you need to do is make sure you go grab that configuration endpoint. So I already have it here, but let's go get it just to make sure we've got the right one. It's right here. It's this one that says OpenID configuration URL. We will just highlight that thing, copy it, and we'll go back here and we can just go up and just get on the quote and then backspace all the way out. And then just Control-Shift-V to paste it in and make sure it's correct. So it's IDP, for me it's idp.sysmainit.com/application/o/netbird/.wellknown/openid. So you should have all of that correct. We'll double check to make sure we've got all the right values. So this one here that says use auth 0 should be false. This one that we kind of skipped over, it says scopes, it should be OpenID, profile, email, offline, access, and API. As you go down, the management IDP should be set as Authentik, and then you've got, of course, the management client ID, and then you've got the username and the password, and then up here, for all these different IDs, you've got the client ID, we pasted it in there, but your auth audience is the same client ID, your auth device auth audience client ID is the same one, and then your device auth audience is the same one. So you've got that same value for all of them. Let's save our changes with Control-O and Enter. We can scan over our changes one more time here, and we're going to exit with Control-X, and we've got that set up. So now we need to install one piece of software. We're going to sudo apt install JQ, and then we can put a space -y, and it's going to ask us for our super user password here, and then it's going to install that piece of software that we need in order to build the Netbird stuff. And we'll just hit tab and hit OK whenever that pops up. And it's done. So now we need to build all of the things we want for Netbird. If we do an ls, oops, there we go. You'll see there's this artifacts folder. So if we ls./artifacts, you'll see there's nothing in there. So what we're going to do is run a command that will use that setup.env to build all of the files that we need in that artifacts folder. So we're going to do ./configure.sh. So you can do ./con and then hit tab and it should auto-complete that for you. We're going to hit that and you should see this thing where it shows those numbers and it's going to spit out a bunch of data. So it's telling you what it's using to do what. And if we go cd artifacts now and we do an ls, you'll see there's a lot of stuff here. There's Docker Compose that we need. There's this management.json, and then there's this turnserver.conf file. So a couple of things we can check here is we can say nano turnserver.conf. We're going to move way down in this thing really, really far. It's down here quite a ways. Let's see. Yep, down here, almost there. It's down past all of the LT cred match, use auth secret. It's past all of that. And we're going to get down here to this section where it says user, and it's got a pound sign in front of it, but then it's got one without it. It says user equals self. And then you've got this long key that it generated for you. This is something you just need to look at. Kind of take note of the key. It starts with JAR, ends with M7M. Okay, we'll exit that. And now we're going to go look at that management.json. So we're going to do nano management.json. And here you'll see that it set up the stun server. And it's also set up a turn server. And on that turn server, it should have the username self, and it should be that same key. So JAR, it ends in M7M, so that looks like the right key. But if you happen to see that, hey, this is not the same, you need to make sure that these values match the values that are in that turnserver.conf. All right, we're matching, so that's good. Hopefully everything for you is matching, so that's a good sign. We are pretty much ready. We're going to run docker compose up-d, and then 2 ampersands docker compose logs-f. Let this run. It's going to pull down all of the stuff that we need. Okay, we've got one error happening, so I'm going to do docker compose down, and it's a thing that I missed whenever we did this initially here. It's easy to fix. 2 things we need to do. So first, we're going to do cd ... and we're going to do nano setup.env. We're going to go down here and put in our email address for the Let's Encrypt stuff. And that's brian@fixitdelrio.com. Save that because we're telling it, let's use Let's Encrypt. So we need the email address there. Save with Control-O and Enter, Control-X to exit nano. And then we also need to go over to our hover and set up a pointer to this public IP address. So let's get the public IP address here. So here on sysmain IT, inside of my hover setup, I'm going to do add a record. It's going to be an A record, and this is going to be NB. And we're going to paste in that IP address. Just like that, and we'll set that to 5 minutes. And now we've got an A record for nb.sysmainit.com. Now it's going to take a few minutes for that to get to where it will resolve. So we'll give it just a minute, and then we'll finish up setting up our Docker stuff. While we're waiting, we'll come back here. Now that we've changed our setup.env, we need to do /configure.sh again. It's going to run. It's going to set up all those things that we need, and we can go back to artifacts. If we do an ls, you can see there's a little bit more stuff here. So it creates a backup of the old version for us, and then it creates a new version of these things. So each of these things now has a backup. That's why you see extra files in here. Also, while we're waiting, there's something else we actually probably need to check and change. So we're going to do sudo nano/etc/hosts. And inside of our host file, you'll see this thing that says 127.0.1.1 for our Netbird system. We don't want that. That's not the right IP address. So we're going to change that to be our public IP address. So we'll just paste in our public IP address there, make sure there's a space after it. And then we're going to save that with Control-O and Enter, and Control-X. And then we can do a ping nb.sysmainit.com. And you can see now that it's pinging to our public IP address, which is good. We want that because that's part of what it needs in order to get everything running properly with Netbird. I don't know why sometimes when you create the server, it sets it up like that with that 127.0.1.1, but it definitely causes problems later when you're trying to get things to function correctly. So definitely something to be aware of there. And then let's go and just run our docker compose up-d. Now this time we're going to use a special flag, -- force -recreate, and then 2 ampersands docker compose logs-f. So we're basically telling it, bring my compose back up, my containers back up, which means it doesn't have to pull anything down this time. Run them as a daemon like we always do, but this time force it to recreate those containers so that we get the fresh information that we just did. So we'll let that kind of go. It's going to get things started. It's going to start spitting out data. So it's got an error on the command management. We'll let it run a few times. Sometimes it takes a few times for it to get it. If we keep seeing that error, we'll have to go back and look, and it could be that it's just Let's Encrypt isn't resolving yet. It looks like Let's Encrypt got it. So that's good. Pretty well done. Let's cancel out of watching the logs there. And let's go see if we can actually access our Netbird domain now. Let's keep the instructions there just in case. nb.sysmainit.com. Now if everything's working, it's going to try to load Netbird and it's going to send us over to Authentik, which is great. Now I'm already authenticated, so it's just telling me, hey, you're about to sign into Netbird. That's fine. It's going to create my user account on Netbird, and then it should log me in. And the first time you get it, you're going to see this message that says, hey, you did it. You're the Authentik default admin, and it's time to add your first device. So we're up and running with Netbird, we're up and running with Authentik, and we're up and running with NGinX Proxy Manager, and we've got these guys all set up and ready to go. So we've got some really great starter base level bone structure to our MSP. Now, does this help our clients? Not yet. But in the next videos, we're going to get into some software, and we're going to set some things up with Authentik, and we'll set them up where we can use the VPN and where they're clustered into a network. And we'll just keep working with it and moving forward with it. I had a few hiccups trying to get this video done. It was a great learning experience for me on the hardest way to do things versus the easier way to do things and the more secure way to do things. So I've actually tried to record this like 5 times. So I'm happy to be finally getting it done and ready to push out to you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. One thing to make note of. If you are running Tailscale clients on the same machine that you try to run Netbird clients, the Netbird clients will be able to connect, but they won't be able to communicate with each other. And it's just a weirdness. I don't know why, but I had this problem at first, and I didn't realize that. And I was running Headscale with Tailscale clients. I had to remove the Tailscale clients and then run Netbird, and everything was able to communicate just fine. And Netbird's got a ton of features and functionality, so we'll kind of go through that as we go, but I definitely suggest you get out there and look at it, try it out, set it up on a few different devices, set it up on your mobile phone. You'll really like it. It's awesome. So hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, like, subscribe, tell your friends about it so they can come along on the open source journey with us, and I'll talk to you next time.